have like in the future the Terminators would have maybe a QR code, maybe. But I mean that's a big ass barcode, right? Look how big that barcode is.
I think Skynet would know better than to use QR codes.
Maybe it's like Battlestar Galactica.
Also,
and the reason why they used the telephones was because, it was a way to preserve that form of communication.
No, I just think the barcode is like this big on your arm for the Terminators. What are they like? Before they terminate you, they're trying to scan you like boop. Boop. This one's not working.
Yeah, man.
Boop.
It's like,
all right, just let him go.
No,
Let him go.
RFID management system like they use at Walmart. We're just inventory to them.
Yeah, that's true.
I know, but sometimes it's
No. You have the gun. You just have the gun. Like you just point for it from further away.
Working. They're like.
Right, that's why it's so big. They can do it from further away. They don't have to get up close.
Yeah, instead of a red dot sight for better aiming, because they're robots, they can have good aiming. It's just a barcode scanner. So yeah, they scan you and then they shoot you all in one thing.
I would just think, why would it be that? I mean, it's a giant barcode. It's a big ass barcode.
Really? I thought you were saying it was small. Let me see.
It's like the size of it's like the full almost the length of his forearm.
Right?
Oh, okay.
That's just like
that is pretty,
I just don't.
A little
you
excessive.
would think they'd have better.
But I think it might also be, connotations to certain parts of our fairly recent history that were not great.
But I'm just saying, why is this so big? Like, it just, it can be. I mean, hell, the cereal box barcode is this tiny.
The bigger it is, the more
how much data are they putting in that barcode?
The more dehumanizing it is.
Or maybe it's cheaper. That could explain it.
Yeah,
that's more ink, Gordon.
Well,
that's more ink.
Yeah.
You only need one fat needle, though.
There you go.
Boop. Boop. You just see like boop. It's not working. Boop. You gotta let me go now. Get out. We're talking Terminator and tattoos. Yeah, we are.
Well, we are live. We got all the friends of the shows here. Peters and the Wills and the Tejas's and the Jose Vincent Santos Aguilar.
Look at you.
Yeah,
it's so fluid off
that
your
one
tongue
that
today.
one was pretty easy. I think I still messed it up.
I ran into a bunch of fans of Full Nerd yesterday at the Intel event, including Sai. He was there.
Nice.
I should have had him come over, but he's
Sai
probably working.
Nice. You went to an Intel event?
Yeah,
I guess we'll be talking about that.
We'll be talking about what they showed off. And actually, hey, we're stop wasting your time. We're talking about ray tracing on GTX.
Too late.
What?
Too late for wasting people's time.
Yeah, we already have wasted it. Intel graphics unveiled. We are going to show you Intel's graphics and tell you all the information that was. You just got to wait for this one. We're going to tell you everything we know about Intel's upcoming integrated graphics.
Everything.
And Comet Lake.
Yeah. Lake full of comments.
I don't know anything about Comet Lake, so I'm looking forward to this.
Did I spell it right? Is it does Comet Lake have a space?
Yeah, space is two words, I believe.
Why does for us today?
Well, they're traditionally they pick bodies of water.
Yeah. Or
landmarks, and I think if it were actually Comet Lake and there were no space, they would have had it that way. But most of them been KB Lake, Skylake. Well, Skylake was two.
Skylake was one word,
right? Yeah. So
I think Cannon Lake's one word, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so that's why I keep getting confused.
KB Lake was two.
Mm-hmm.
Skylake was one.
I have encouraged him to try to kind of push Lake Merritt is there. There's also Stowe Lake in San Francisco.
Lake Merritt.
These are the most underwhelmed. They're more puddles. And Lake Merritt, of course,
a dirty ass puddle.
I think
is
Stowe
more
Lake's
like
not even natural.
It's a dirty ass puddle. Yeah. What, Stowe Lake's not even natural, right?
I don't think it is.
It's just like they dug up a hole and they forgot to fill it in. It filled up with rainwater.
Yeah.
Also, we have somebody in the chat, Vile, saying Brad kicks butt. He sure does.
Thank you.
He sure does.
Only when I drink too much.
There you go. All right. I think we are ready to roll.
Ready to roll? Okay.
If you're ready to roll.
I'm barely functioning. That thing went really long yesterday, so
yeah.
So to like 10. All right, ready?
Well, hold on. And yep, we're ready. Do it.
Wait, I just need to sort some things in my brain.
88.
I'm just trying to think of I have to make sure I can't mention things we can't talk about, so I have to enforce that in my
what
brain.
a tease.
Well, I can't talk about it, but I'm like, I'm so tired.
Talking about it.
I'm so tired now. Like, am I going to blurt that out because it's live? It doesn't come back. There's
it doesn't.
There's no button. Adam can't push a button and
There's no
bleep something
emoji
out.
To put over your mouth with the bleep sound.
It is Wednesday, is it, or Thursday?
It is
I'm just too
Thursday.
tired.
Thursday. Half day for me tomorrow too.
Instead of the soundboard, of old Gordon stuff. I should.
And they have this fucking 12-year-old.
You can't use that.
There goes our Disney sponsorship.
I can't hear whatever Adam just did, but I get the gist from y'all's reaction.
There was an F-bomb in there for sure. Although, didn't
Gordon used
Disney,
to cuss a lot.
Didn't Disney just acquire Fox? Or
Who
something like that?
haven't they acquired?
I know exactly.
Jeez.
So maybe
That's why I'm
maybe our
pushing
sponsorship
for
is not
Disney to
in
buy
danger.
us.
Yeah, right. Who knows?
You're not gonna.
No, I'm just saying.
Also,
I should get one of those
Nerd World at
Nerd World. Oh my God,
Disneyland. What
would be in the full Nerd World?
A bin full of old PC parts. Really?
Look inside the capacitor, kids.
You have to get your pass. You gotta come back in 2 hours to play with the just busted up old parts in the bin. It's like Lego Land, but with PC parts and bins. Yeah, that could be.
Look, everybody, it's a PC.
Also,
slot.
Peter says, "No offense, G-Man, but that Disney sponsorship was off the table years ago."
No, it's gonna happen. It's going to happen. Disney. We're a family-friendly show. That's why no swearing.
Yep, we keep telling ourselves that. Let's do it.
All right. In this episode of The Full Nerd, RTX on GTX. That damn it, that's all wrong. It's ray tracing. I don't even know. We'll have to talk this out. Brad will tell me.
I call it RTX on GTX. It works.
Yeah, whatever. Quick enough.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, ray tracing on GTX, everything we know about Intel graphics, and a lake full of comets. Comment lake.
That sounds kind of cool, actually. I want to see that.
A lake full of comets.
I think I saw that in Final Fantasy VII.
Is it the lake?
Longer than that. Wow, now I feel old.
Welcome to The Full Nerd, episode 88. I'm your host, Gordon Ung, with co-host Brad Charkis.
I'm old.
And as always, Elena Yee.
You're not that old because the remake only just came out.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
The remake of Final Fantasy VII?
Uh-huh. It's like a HD remaster.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've lost track because that whole Roman numeral thing, like VVVIALLLLI.
I like
the Super
Roman
Bowl.
numerals.
Alex,
They're fun. Yeah.
There's a reason why they're no longer around. And Adam Patrick Murray controlling the vertical and horizontal.
Hey, we got Big Mama in the house. Yeah, that's Big
cool.
Mama literally in the house on chat over here.
What's that song? Brick House? Like now that's playing in my head. Dang
She's a brick.
No, don't do it.
House.
Yeah, you started
Didn't Martin Lawrence have a movie called Big Mama's
Yeah,
House?
that's what I was thinking. Martin.
Yeah.
I was thinking Martin Lawrence. It's like, wow, he got out. I mean, like, because I think he go cuckoo from like too much money or something like that, and just.
Oh, that's the thing, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. He was away, I think.
It's funny. It turns out it is Martin Lawrence, and he's just trying to kill some time and get his mind off things.
Yeah. Well, this user, Big Mama. It's also Big Mama in Discord doesn't have a photo here, so I don't know who it is. We never know.
Hi, Big Mama.
But Steven is asking, where's the new AMD GPU? Are we going to talk about that?
Well, first we have to. Well, the more important thing is Intel in the GPU, but that's the second topic.
Yeah,
I want to know. So we are a little out of phase here.
Hey, so Gordon, I learned something this week. You know how you need a RTX graphics card to run ray tracing?
Yes.
You don't.
Ray tracing.
Yeah.
Wait, so you're saying that 1080 Ti that I bought is still good?
What, you bought one?
It's been still good. I bought one. I have one on my machine right now, actually. But this week at Game Developers Conference, that's what's going on this week. That's the, spurring on all these announcements that we're going to be talking about. NVIDIA announced that it's going to unlock DirectX ray tracing API capabilities for all of its GTX 16 series cards and its GTX 10 series cards of the GTX 1060 and above. So you still won't be able to do it on a budget card, but you'll be able to, if you're a masochist, to enable ray tracing on your GTX 1080 Ti. Yes.
I was just about to ask you, Brad. I was going to say, wait a second, isn't that going to run like poo?
Yeah, it's going to run like poo. So if you remember, one of the things that people ding the RTX 2060 for that came out $350 recently is how much slower it is in ray tracing compared to the upper end cards. So, if you turn on ray tracing, you have to make some compromises to try to hit 60 frames per second in a lot of the games or there's only been a handful of games, but in the handful of games that support ray tracing so far, it's going to be a lot worse on GTX series cards because they obviously don't have the dedicated RT core hardware that RTX cards do. Man, there's so many acronyms.
And it probably also the difference between things like global illumination or real-time reflections, the different kinds of ray tracing is probably going to have different kinds of hits, right?
Ambient occlusion, blah, blah, blah.
Actually, NVIDIA held a press briefing before they announced this. We had a bunch of questions. The briefing only lasted about half an hour, but then we had like another 40 minutes of questions trying to get our head around this. And NVIDIA had admitted, look, man, it's going to depend on the game and how they use ray tracing. So if you have, let's say, a GTX 1080 Ti and you're playing something like Battlefield 5, which uses ray tracing just for reflections, you're probably going to want a G-Sync or FreeSync monitor, but that's probably going to be doable. I mean, you're going to be able to tinker with things to make that work a bit. And get like ray tracing low working kind of a deal on GTX, which is better than nothing if you don't mind the hit and you can get the 60 frames per second. On the flip side of the coin, something like global illumination, which is what Metro uses. That's the reason we're like, hey, Metro is by far the best ray tracing implementation yet. It really makes a difference for the game, et cetera, et cetera. My phone just started ringing. Let me turn that off.
Hello. Is Jensen here to tell you how ray tracing works?
But yeah, so global illumination, it's basically ray tracing, all the light coming off of the moon and the natural light sources in that game. And NVIDIA's like, yeah, there's you can try running that on a GTX card if you want, but something that intense, it's still not going to run on a GTX card. That's the whole reason the dedicated RT hardware had to come about so that it could realistically be used. But if you don't mind seeing what it's about, if you have a decently powerful card, and you don't mind using the low ray tracing settings, there's a good chance you'll be able to dabble with it somewhat. With these drivers that are coming out sometime in April.
Do you think this is ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Because I have this feeling that this just makes it very confusing for people out there, especially people who aren't in the weeds like we are. Like it just might be well, RTX over here, but the GTX is now getting the same thing that RTX is. Why would I get an RTX? It just seems kind of confusing.
I think it is kind of confusing. I think it's telling that it was announced this week during the Game Developers Conference. I think this is, NVIDIA admitted they didn't sell as many RTX cards as they expected last year. I wouldn't be surprised if this is NVIDIA trying to drum up interest with developers, because during the briefing they were hyping up all right, now there's tens of millions of cards that can run ray tracing since we're bringing up this older generation.
Yeah.
So this is a way to
trying
get
to
them,
drive up developer interest and saying, hey, there's a bigger user base than you think.
That makes more sense to look at it from that perspective than the user perspective.
Yeah.
Because my first thought when I heard this was, is this a way for them to try to highlight the contrast where it's like, hey, you want to get an RTX card if you want to try these features.
To make you feel bad, theory.
Yeah, exactly. And then I thought, well, that's a lot of development resources just to try to tease people into upgrading. But that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of that too, though.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it just, I do think it makes sense to just have it out there for developers. I mean, we know every time we do one of these big changes, developers are not going to adopt every single feature. They're going to pick one little thing and apply it to their game as it works. So it is entirely possible you could do, reflections in a game just enough at a low setting that it'll run on legacy hardware, older hardware, right? So non-ray tracing hardware.
And if they convince enough, games to include at least, reflections to start like Battlefield does, and hopefully in genres that make a little bit more sense for the technology. I don't think Battlefield 5 is the best showcase for that. Then that would make RTX cards more valuable in the long run too. So it makes a lot of sense from NVIDIA's point of view, I think.
Do you think this... Sorry, I was just going to ask, do you think this also maybe indicates that upcoming console generations aren't going to have dedicated RTX hardware? They aren't. That maybe they just do some real low-level ray tracing on, GTX-ish hardware.
I think that the next-gen consoles might have, if not said outright, at least heavily implied that they plan on going with AMD again. If not, That's what I strongly expect anyway. So I don't think ray tracing is going to be dedicated hardware inside next gen consoles, regardless.
But
if you go and go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, speaking of consoles, though, to Adam's point, I do feel like them approaching it this way is going to just be really confusing, because when the Xbox One X launched, they talked about Xbox One X enhanced games, but it's such a wide field of what that could mean. It can mean either HDR support, it can mean, actual like 4K support, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to like dig into the details of each game to figure out what exactly you're getting. So seeing that banner doesn't actually mean anything to me anymore, because it's just like, well, I guess I'm getting something that I have to go research, as opposed to just being, here's the name, here's the brand, here's what that actually represents.
Did that happen?
I hate that. That was my issue with when Steam machines first came out too. Like, this sounds good, but really I want like Xbox Live X support to mean, okay, this game's going to run in 4K HDR, whether it's 60 or 30, I don't care, as long as I know, hey, if I buy this, it's going to be 4K HDR or whatever.
Right. And it sounds like this could end up being the same way, where they'll say, we have ray tracing support, but what does that actually mean? Well, you have to dig in. This game, it's only reflections. This game, it's actually global illumination. This game, it's all of the above, which is not really helpful as a kind of a brand thing, I feel like.
And even before this, Crytek showed off a demo of ray tracing stuff like in engine, right? I don't know how that works, Brad.
Well, it's kind of tricky that NVIDIA's doing this GTX unlocking of ray tracing now, because ray tracing has always been able to run on hardware that can handle it. I mean, you have that Quake demo that NVIDIA showed off at GDC. They updated it, but that was out years and years ago. Ray tracing is not a new concept, and it's always been able to run on graphics hardware. The problem is it runs really crappily.
Well, but didn't the Crytek thing run really well? Isn't that the whole thing?
I don't that many details.
I don't put much stock into demos being run like that either.
I had a conversation with Jared over from PC Gamer about it last night, and he was under the impression that the Crytek implementation doesn't use DXR.
Yep. And there are many rival ray tracing implementations. NVIDIA and AMD both have them, for instance.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I'm sure AMD is going to say we're going to do DXR, right? I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah.
Why? And it does kind of make you wonder, why would Crytek not use a standardized API for Windows platform? Except my thought is like because they want to do consoles or something else, right? So
mobile.
Yeah.
I mean, the CryEngine is definitely used in other places, so yeah.
So
I find it interesting how NVIDIA is like, oh yeah, we're doing this on GTX now, when the whole time they're like, you need new hardware to unlock this futuristic, mind-blowing technology. You need an RTX graphics card. So I think for them to say now to run on GTX, 10 series cards is kind of a weird, like, I thought you said we needed an RTX card.
You
kind
do.
Of deal.
There's just an asterisk that no one paid attention to in the statement.
You should.
Yeah.
And you actually do, because like if you go and look, I wrote an article at PC World about this. Obviously, that's my job.
PCWorld.com.
Yeah, PCWorld.com. If you go and you look at it, I included one of the screenshots that was included in NVIDIA's press deck. They had this for a bunch of different games. I included the one from Metro that basically shows you one frame. Rendering this game, here's one frame. On Pascal GTX 1080 Ti, it's, takes the length of the slide because it doesn't have RT cores. It doesn't have Tensor cores. It doesn't have dedicated INT32 cores. So, AI kind of stuff, which is not accurate, but whatever, continuing. So yeah, on GTX 1080 Ti, a frame will take this long. Whereas if you switch to Turing, all of a sudden the RT cores can be doing the ray tracing action at the same time as the game's doing the shaders. So, frames take less time. And then if you turn on DLSS or something, it's, saves that much more. So that's obviously NVIDIA trying to say, hey, you still want an RTX card? But I believe they're totally right. Just the architecture is inherently different, and I think that ray tracing is going to run like significantly slower on the older cards.
Yeah, but I mean, at least I guess for certain games, developer could opt to just do a very low version of it that you can at least run on older cards.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. I also included, I'm looking at it right now, so I'll bring it up. Included a slide from that deck about Battlefield 5. Where Battlefield 5's, it's ray trace reflection, so it's not very intensive. So you can actually get, with ray tracing turned on, you can get over 40 frames per second with, I think they said the graphics were turned on pretty either high or ultra otherwise. So you can get over 40 frames per second with the GTX 1080 Ti running, ray tracing at 1440p. It's 1.6 times faster, so almost 80 frames per second with RTX 2080, running all the modern technology. And that was the best case scenario, though. If you look at something like Metro, where it's the global illumination, like it just tanks. It's different. But if more games start having reflections or something like that, then yeah, that could realistically run, as long as you're not a 60 frames or bust junkie, on older graphics cards.
But that most of us are, that 60 is just what we all want to achieve.
Or maybe it's the difference of, hey, usually I play in 1440p, but I'm going to tune it down to 1080p,
That's what I do. I have 4K monitors, so if I can't get it up to speed, I drop them down to 1440, because I'd rather have speed than higher resolution personally. But something to keep in mind is this isn't actually, RTX is like NVIDIA's branding of the stuff that it builds on top of DirectX ray tracing API, DXR. This is NVIDIA unlocking DXR for the GTX series cards. So that means that these cards still obviously don't have dedicated tensor cores. So these cards, even though ray tracing's getting unlocked, they won't be able to run DLSS, deep learning, super sampling, to try to boost the frame rate. So that's just something else to keep in mind.
And there's also, oh God, I'm just fried. Sorry. There's also, I think, a need for a lot of education around this, doesn't it feel like? Because I mean, that seemed like the one thing is everybody says ray tracing, but there's just so many different elements of it. So I don't know what the hell.
I mean, same as
I think it's tricky. I think NVIDIA was particularly smart launching this as soon as they did, because I think they've done a very good job of tying ray tracing and DXR to the RTX brand. And that's not true. RTX is something built on top of all of that. And that's smart for them. Now people associate ray tracing with RTX, but it just muddies the water so much, because RTX means DLSS. RTX means the dedicated hardware inside of these. It's just like this big branding thing that's not the actual DXR implementation.
There's even a lot of the terminology is a little wacky, because, I mean, you want to call this software ray tracing, right? That's what.
Yes.
But it's not. And we had a discussion, I was with them yesterday, and they were like, well, software ray tracing sort of implies CPU host-based to most people. But this is not running on the CPU. This is running on the shader cores in the GPU. So the performance of the GPU actually still matters for this.
Yep.
Sorry, I got a question from a really good one from CyberLab Studio. He was saying, ever since RTX came out, they were saying, I've always wondered if customers with SLI 1070s or higher could be allowed to use the second card as an RTX accelerator like they can with physics right now. Could you ever see that happening?
That's a good question, actually. I'm not sure how that would work. It could theoretically, I think, work. I think it'd be tricky to get going off the bat, because typically SLI, like, one renders one frame, one renders the other, and they just swap, basically. So to use it differently, it will take rethinking how you're doing that. I would think that theoretically, yes. I'm not sure if NVIDIA cares to invest heavily into doing that, though. They'd rather you just buy an RTX graphics card.
I mean, maybe it's a way to bring SLI back, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It would not be to SLI older parts that you already own, I'm sure. But I guess the other issue is you still have to get the issue is that latency of getting all that information to the other card to spit out and everything hooked up to not. Everybody cares about latency these days. Nobody cares that much about high frame rates as much. So that's why SLI kind of died on the vine, right?
Why not both? I like both.
It would be good. Maybe it's just too hard to do, and it's a hard develop. It's always been hard for developers to do. So, do you buy much into they're just trying to make everybody feel bad theory? You really lean more toward the okay.
No, I think there's a reason it was announced at GDC. It's because they're going to be talking. GDC, we're covering it a lot this year because it's had a lot of consumer-facing stuff like this and the Intel thing that we're going to talk about next, and Google Stadia. But in general, it really is like one of the more heavily developer-focused shows out there. Like the Google I/O and stuff, it's theoretically a dev show, but everyone knows that's where they announce new Pixel phones and stuff. GDC really is a dev conference. I think NVIDIA is rolling this out here, and then they're going to spend all this week, on the show floor pitching all these developers to, hey, man, have you seen what we're doing over here? We just unlocked it on GTX graphics cards. There's tens of millions of cards out there. Got a big base already. So that's 100% what I think it is.
And there were also some big wins at the show, too. Didn't they actually finally announce the Unreal Engine would support DXR?
And Unity. Both
and Unity.
are going
So
to
that's
support
that's a
DXR.
big deal. I mean,
Yeah. And what is it? Dragon Hound is a game coming out in, I forget, I have a note somewhere. One of those two engines. And it's going to be the first one to include both, I believe, reflections and shadows. So, so far, Battlefield has had reflections. Shadow of the Tomb Raider just came out this week, actually. I haven't had a chance to test it because it's GDC week. And that only has shadows. And then Metro has global illumination. This game, Dragon Hound by Nexon's going to have two of them. So,
I'm kind of wondering when we're going to get to the point where we get all of it, like everything. I mean, that's...
Yeah, hopefully soon. That's what I want to see. I want to see ray tracing.
fully path trace like that Quake 2 game that was it Quake 2 or Quake 1? It was Quake 1, I think they did, right?
As Quake 2.
No, yeah, okay. Yeah, it seems like
Quake-
that would
Quake
sort of
3
kill
is the
everything.
best, but I can get why they're leaning on the old ray tracing depth.
I don't even
I love Quake
remember
3, man.
Quake 3.
Quake 3 Arena.
Oh, no. Quake 2. Quake 2 is
Good
where
times.
it's at. Good, it was good times, right? A different world back then.
Definitely.
Do you think this is a position of weakness? Like they just had to do it? Or...
I don't think it's a position of weakness. I do think it's caused by RTX not selling as fast as they expected it would last quarter. Them underestimating just, the cryptocurrency build up stock and stuff like that. Like when the RTX 2080 came out, we're like, you should totally buy a GTX 1080 Ti still, at least while they were still in stock. And I think they're looking to recover from that and build excitement for this. Because, I mean, what's it been now? 5 or 6 months since the 2080 Ti came out?
September, right?
Yeah, I think so, because Gamescom was in August. So, it's been half a year, and there's still only 3-4 games that have ray tracing. So, I mean, something needs to get going. But, again, these things take time. But,
Yeah, nothing happened overnight.
yeah, they got to start flogging the whip if they want it to be a thing. So,
I kind of hope that it doesn't get abused, the whole ray tracing, because sometimes developers just want to... Remember when everybody's like, hey, we have DX12 support in our game, and it didn't make any damn difference. It was like...
it's often worse. Yeah.
So, I hope that people don't just say it's got ray tracing support and it's just got like that much or doesn't do anything, But
Yep. And that's another, I guess, tricky part for them. This is built on top of DXR, which is part of DirectX 12, and DirectX 12 still isn't a given for any game. Like I would say the majority of games, AAA games even, are still DirectX 11. So, I mean, these things take time, and they're just trying to build it up. So,
yeah, well, the average development cycle is 3 years probably, at least.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I'm always glad, even if it runs like butt, I'm glad to have the option for, if I have a 1080 Ti and I have Battlefield 5, why don't I turn it on and see just how horrible or wonderful it is for myself,
There's a box quote, runs like butt.
I think I got the impression, you sort of have 60 on Turing, 30, maybe 30 on Turing. If you do all the ray tracing in the CUDA cores, you essentially turn off the hardware acceleration, and then probably half of that on a Pascal card.
Yeah, don't expect it to run great.
But you can already sort of do that with Battlefield, though, right? With the ray tracing, if the driver support it. No, wait.
No,
Oh.
that's me. No.
Okay.
NVIDIA hasn't made it so... No, you're going to have to wait for the April driver.
Okay. We'll have to wait and see then. But your prediction is butt performance.
but
technical
it
term,
should
but-
be all right. Yeah. If you have a higher end card, it might be all right enough for you to see what you're missing and be like, oh, now I need to buy a better graphics card, like Elena was saying.
Titan XP.
Make you feel worse. Make you feel worse. But you know what makes me feel good? There might be competition.
Oh.
That's a pretty good.
That was
segue.
really smooth.
You know, I'm
Well
I'm
done.
not that worn out right now.
Yeah, well, and I feel bad because I have to stop it because I just want to give a little shout out to our IT channel or our enterprise channel that I think all you IT pros out there might want to check out. It's our sister YouTube channel, Tech Talk from IDG. Which is our parent company. Go check them out if you are looking for some enterprise stuff. They're just kind of building out their newer channel. So
We are
give
way
them a-
more fun over here.
yeah,
Just putting this out there.
but they're working on it. So if you're interested,
Yeah.
give a look. Give a
people,
sub. So
though.
yeah,
It's
They actually, yeah, our
unsung
enterprise
hero job.
sites are, if you're in IT, are a fantastic resource. Like those people all know just what they're talking about stuff that makes my head spin. So
It took
lots
me
of
years to figure
servers
out
and
there was no.
databases and
It took me years to figure out there had nothing to do with Star Trek, though. I will admit. Enterprise.
enterprise. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. All right, back to your segue.
That you, yeah.
Sorry.
I had
that you
such a great
interrupted to talk
interest.
about enterprise
Can
videos.
Dang it. Enterprise videos.
And we
I'm
don't mean
sorry.
the one with the quantum leap dude either, whatever his name was. That was a bad.
Oh,
Wait,
Star Trek Enterprise?
Was that even bad for you, Elena?
That wasn't that bad.
Oh, the minute they switched to a series that had like vocals for the intro song, I was
oh, yeah,
done.
that was the end.
That was
Oh,
no.
I think I might have erased that from my memory. I don't remember that.
You don't want to remember
It had a
it.
few good episodes.
do not want
It had
to
a
remember it.
few good episodes. But the
I didn't
ultimate-
watch enough to find the few good episodes. I watched a couple of those, go, that's not my thing, and never watched it again.
I'm with Brad.
Dean Stockwell?
That's it.
Is somebody saying?
No, is it Dean Stockwell?
Scott, what's his
No,
face?
no, whatever his name is. Then he was like later on whatever NCIS or not NCIS, but the other one that they just make 25 versions of, CSI.
Yeah. The never-ending
Yeah,
series.
Scott Bakula, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Oh, Scott
That's it.
Bakula.
Bakula? I don't know if
Yeah.
that's his name.
See, look, even if
I was
Elena,
thinking Scott
Elena
Baio,
didn't
and I
like
knew
it.
that wasn't right. So I was just-
Scott Baio.
No.
That would be a weird season of Star Trek.
It's Joni and Chachi episode of Star Trek.
That's funny.
Do we have the picture though? I want to show the
Oh,
picture.
God, man.
See, that was why I put it in there because we
I
got to
know.
we have to kick off the Intel graphics discussion.
Yeah, people
with the
just want to see
picture.
the card, man.
You want to see the
What's
card?
the card? What's
I took
the
a picture
performance?
of the card.
You didn't
A
take a
pic-
picture of the
I
card.
took a picture of the card.
There was no card.
I took a picture of the card, which was a picture on the screen, which was
Oh.
rendered. Wait,
Picture
come
in
on.
picture.
I know.
you don't
hold
have
on.
it?
I'm getting it.
I want to hear opinions on this.
So what is this card from? What is this card from?
This is so. Last night, Intel did its big Odyssey launch at GDC. It catered mostly to a lot of developers. You know, it's a developer conference. These are people who make the games that everybody enjoys. It was actually a really, there was a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement. There were also lots of Intel employees too, but there was excitement among legitimately among a lot of developers, I think. And to tell you how significant this graphics push by Intel is, the current CEO of Intel showed up there too. I mean, Roger was there, Jim Keller was there. You would expect, those guys are sort of the stars for a lot of the PC community right now. But you had the new CEO, pop out on stage. It's like, wow. So this is a big initiative for Intel. I think they want to win. They're serious about this one, and we're waiting for the card.
Oh, yeah, here it is. The card.
There goes the card.
There it
See?
is. That's Intel's graphics card, right?
No, it's not.
Confirmed. Oh,
Yeah, it
what?
is.
What they showed it on stage.
It will be generally that shape, and it will have connectors on the back and a PCI Express on the bottom, Brad.
Confirmed.
And I have
in
a
it.
fan too. Wow.
That is so basically what you're looking at is a one of the potential ways the card will look at the end. That looks very much like an Optane storage drive, PCIe Optane drive, that sort of style. And that is about all we know about the upcoming Intel graphics card.
No, that's what that is that's not from Intel whatsoever. That is a community
Yeah,
artist.
well.
Christians, I can't pronounce his last name. It starts with an S. If you look at Intel Graphics, they retweet his stuff because
Yeah.
he does a bunch of these. And this is a concept design he made up. That's not from Intel. It could be totally different.
It could
That's
be
just
totally
this is
different.
real cool. The thing is, that event last night was a community event kicking off the Odyssey, they call it. So the Odyssey towards them releasing graphics cards or whatever. And so they were highlighting these community members, to 3D renderings of what they want it to look like.
But-
so don't take that as official.
It's not
Wait.
official, but it could be official, so
Wait, hold
which
on.
makes it partially official.
What if it did?
Wait, they're calling it Odyssey. Does that mean we have to wait 20 years before we actually see what the card looks like?
Is that how long?
No,
it
that's
took
just how
Homer?
long it'll take them to get a good one.
Homer wrote the story, right?
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought the hero was Homer Simpson. But
Homer Simpson. Yep. Real question from Ab hit the plane. I don't know. Will Intel GPUs be based on 14 nanometer or 10 nanometer?
Don't know.
don't know.
Well, I don't know. This looks pretty small, so maybe 10 nanometer, right? You got less room in that card.
Yeah, it was interesting because people were like, "Oh wow, this card must be really underpowered if they fit in." It doesn't mean anything, right? This
I don't
is
see
just
any
simply-
power pins.
This is sort of
right.
There were no
It's not-
power
it's-
pins either.
It's from a
but
community person. It's not anybody who worked
No,
at Intel. It's
Adam's
not.
Adam's just
he's just
voicing the
All right.
questions we all have.
yeah, but what it is Intel wanting to engage with people in the PC community. Like, I swear to God, I know Brad is saying this is a concept, it's a community person, but I can entirely see Intel saying we're going to have a contest, you get to vote on these designs, we're going to use this shroud. Because, I mean, ultimately a shroud is just, plastic or shaped aluminum on the
think-
outside, doesn't matter, right?
I think it'd be badass if he had actually another really cool one a month or two ago, the same artist of the same kind of idea that looked a lot like their awesome SSDs. I forget the name, the Optane drives. That looked really good. So I think it'd actually be super cool because they're pushing community real fast to just be like, hey man, he made these, we loved them, so we gave him $20,000, and now we're actually going to make our cards look like that. I think that'd be a cool move.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible, right? So
Yeah.
that's why, I know it's not official, this is a community thing, but it's clear that Intel wants to build. This is the chuff of the hype train taking off, right? It's just starting. There will be like, here's the designs, you get to vote on it, and you'll get a free card if yours wins. Maybe 20 of the top people will win the card that we'll draw, and then you'll win the card if we whatever, blah blah blah. So,
But Gordon, a lot of people, including Timothy, want to know: did they say anything at all of note about performance when it's coming out? How much it'll cost? Anything?
I think the only confirmed information is end of next year, right?
Oh, that's very
2020. They didn't even say end, I don't think. Have they said end? They just said 2020.
Well, then that's news for me. Then the news I got last night was like end of next year. It's kind of like
Oh, all right. There we go.
endish of next, but second half of 2020, 2H20. So, and everybody's like, are you going to do ray tracing? Will there be ray tracing support? And they're like, we're not. No.
Actually, something came out this week, which is not related to what we're talking about now, but NVIDIA's been testing variable refresh rate shading. So basically, the areas of the screen that you're not focused on, that aren't getting the action, they're shaded at a different, lower level of resolution so that you can improve performance without really impacting the visuals. It actually works amazing. NVIDIA's been doing it for a while. You can play it right now if you have an RTX card in Wolfenstein 2. That got added, variable rate shading, to DirectX 12 this week, Microsoft announced. And Intel's Gen 11 graphics are already supporting it, so whenever it comes out. But they're working on supporting it. So.
Well, that was the other thing too, right? They also showed off their new Intel graphics control command center.
It used to be the control panel or something like that, but now it's the graphics command center. So yeah, that's what that was the highlight of the event last night, right? You went, I didn't. Is that they were showing off the new graphics command center. They sent us those cards, yes. The pictures of cards that may not look like cards. But yeah, so they announced a new graphics command center, basically replacing the old Intel control panel, which if you use integrated graphics, you might have dove in there. It looks like a control panel. It's not slick whatsoever, the existing one. It gets the job done. It just is, basically. And they completely overhauled. They made a new one called the Graphics Command Center, as I said, and it actually looks pretty slick.
Yeah.
It looks like a modern app. It's actually it's an early access now. You can try it out, but it's only available through the Windows 10 store. So I'm guessing this will only be a Windows 10 app. I'm not sure about the details of that yet. But yeah, it looks really slick. It has a nice Nebula background. They added a game optimization, auto optimization feature for some of your games, where it's like basically like GeForce Experience, where you open it up and you'll see, hey man, you want to optimize this game? You hit yes, no, optimize it based on the Intel processor.
I have news there.
Okay.
I'm formally announcing today I am going to Intel to work as director of game optimization. It's pretty easy. I just show up and for IGP, I just set everything to low. And then call it a day.
All done.
That's just a burn. I thought it's funny.
But yeah, but this new graphics command center actually looks pretty good. It's clear that they're laying the groundwork for the discrete graphics cards, which is it pronounced Z? It's XE. Is it Z?
I think it's.
Did they ever say it out loud?
No, they never did. But
yeah, they're clearly laying the groundwork for that. But if you already have an Intel 6th gen or newer CPU with integrated graphics, you can use this now. You just go try the early access version. It looks really slick. It's basically the same thing as the current one, the older one. It looks better, much better now. Mark was telling me it's pretty responsive. Mark Hockman, our colleague, actually took all these pictures that I wrote about. It has the new game optimization. The thing that was I was like, really? When I was going through this, is that out of the box, meaning today, it only has auto optimization for 30 games. I'm not sure what 30. That's not very many, though.
For IGP, and it was, right? For Intel Integrated Graphics.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's only if it's optimizing for graphics.
Yes, it's optimizing for Intel graphics.
It's easy, Brad. I've optimized all of them already. Whoa.
But if you go to, I think it's gameplay.intel.com, they actually have, you search your processor in the game you want, and they have thousands of listings. Like, I don't know about that, but they have tons of listings for all kinds of games. So I was surprised to see that there's only 30 supported out of the box. But the fact that they do have a good resource already at gameplay.intel.com, I'm hoping they add more sooner. It's kind of lacking in, more hardcore enthusiast features. Like there's no game streaming options. There's no overlay options. No overclocking. All those sorts of things would be better suited for discrete graphics anyway. So hopefully once these Z cards roll out, maybe we'll start seeing them then. But all in all, this is a great foot forward, I think. And they're looking for community feedback. That's why this is early access. They're going to have a Reddit AMA on the 25th of April for feedback. They're going to have, I'm not sure where, but they said they're going to have community threads open, so they're looking for feedback. They're going to be looking for the community to make skins to change the look of it. So they're actually they want people to use this if you use integrated graphics to play League of Legends or Rocket League or whatever. And get back to them, and they're hoping to improve. So it's actually a great step forward, I think, for Intel, setting the groundwork for Z to come out.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they're just building the foundation here. I have a question, though. So we know the parts won't come out till end of next year, probably, or sometime in the second half of next year. Somebody asked me this last night, but I want to hear what your opinions are. What will it take for Intel's GPU to be successful? Is there a performance level, a price level has a hit, feature set that what your opinions are like?
Yeah.
What do they have?
I just want them to be competitive. I mean, I know it's the first iteration, so I want them to be competitive. Hopefully with mainstream. I think if they want to mainstream, under $300. Under $300, be competitive with whatever AMD or Intel's or AMD and Nvidia's got going on, price and performance wise. That's what I want to see. That'd be a solid first effort, I think.
So like a 2060.
And I would like them to support FreeSync, which they said they're going to.
Yeah,
and I'm going to.
I think that's But what do you? So you think sounds like a 2060 for 250?
Yeah, I'd be very happy with that. I mean, who knows a year and a half from now? But right now, I'd be very happy with that.
The thing is, though, I said kind of facetiously yes, as in, that has to hit certain combinations of features, performance, and price. But I do think as the new kid on the block, they're going to have to bring something a little extra to the table to make people want to make that jump. Right? They're either going to have to really give you a lot of performance for the price, or they're going to really have to give you a good price for the performance. You know what I mean? Something like that. Because I don't see why someone who's already part of an ecosystem, right? They've already chosen AMD, they've already chosen NVIDIA, why they would jump ship for the next one for an unknown, right?
Yeah.
Human beings are just...
I think what they're gonna use, and it'll do them a lot of good, is all their marketing dollars and the fact that a lot of the systems you see in Best Buy and Walmart and stuff are already Intel, and they're gonna be Intel inside CPU and GPU, and I think they're just gonna push hard on the marketing.
But that's a lower end market for the most part. So that would be surprising to me if they went that direction with it, because it seems like with even showing this render or this concept art, talking to developers and advertising all that, they're making a play for enthusiasts. Like, they want to be known among enthusiasts. And if you're going for a Walmart or a Best Buy type thing, which would give them access to a lot of people, I just don't feel like those are the same pools of people. Like, I mean, they could be going after everybody. I don't know.
I agree with you, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way. I agree.
Well, so what I wonder is, does Intel, when their card comes out, does it have to beat NVIDIA's top card or AMD's top card at the time? We're talking...
I don't think it has to
2080
beat the
Ti.
top card. I mean, I think that's definitely a mic drop if you can do it. But I think they have to take whatever is the most popular, either the most popular or the most powerful, to get people's attention, and then do it so well that it keeps their attention.
Yeah. Or I'm just afraid that people will react to it and say, oh, you couldn't even beat a 2080 card, and you've been working on this forever. And then that sort of that. I
think so. Just looking, I mean, obviously they're different divisions, but if you look at on the CPU side, I think if you go on that track record, because I don't date far back enough to remember their early efforts with GPUs.
They were not good.
So I think that they would probably hit performance pretty decently, if not very well. I'm more worried about their pricing because it's Intel. Like, they might not realize, because big companies sometimes kind of get caught in their own
$1,723.
They kind of get caught in their own way of doing things for a while, and sometimes they're not nimble enough to realize, like, they're positioning themselves as kind of the new person, the startup, the little guy.
But I mean, yeah, that's true. It is a potential pitfall for Intel. But I just get the feeling that for Intel, and the way they did this whole rollout last night, and the way they're sort of building this up, they get to, for once, not be Intel, right? They don't have to be the shining light on the tower on the hill that everybody looks up to for CPUs, and you can't get. They get to, with GPUs, fight this guerrilla war with NVIDIA, which is the 900-pound gorilla of right. So
I'm not getting that vibe. I'm just saying that is a potential danger for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right? You can't be like, we're gonna sell you a 2080 for $1,000. It's like, what? It's got an Intel label on it. No, that won't fly. I don't.
That's probably why they're finally getting into GPUs, because they see how much NVIDIA's charging for them now.
Oh man!
Oh my God! These 2080 Ti's are $1,200.
I do wonder. I mean, going to your point, Brad, about the fact that they could be selling systems where it's like all Intel inside. Is there something that they could do to make the CPU and the GPU work together in a way that you couldn't get otherwise? That would be a strength that they could have potentially.
Yeah, Jet had that question too.
Yeah,
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but it is potential for them to hook it into their CPU to also, hey, by the way, if you run an Intel graphics,
you get this like extra boost performance, like that would be the killer feature for them, right? Like it's a little. I mean, obviously it's proprietary, but that's a thing that they could offer over the other two.
But the only problem with that is then people start screaming that, oh, well, I have Verizon. I have Verizon 3rd gen or I have Verizon 4th gen. You're not giving me these features, then it's bad.
It's all about the marketing, right?
Go shit about Intel.
So it's about the marketing. It's how you position it. You like as we saw with going back to consoles, but Microsoft, how they positioned the Xbox One originally. They framed it in such a way that no one wanted it the way it was, even though the features were actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I just don't see Intel graphics being a strength market, like people don't go to Best Buy and say, "Oh, I went Intel graphics." I mean, that's just not like it's like what?
No, I mean like because they're trying. So my perception is that because they're trying to appeal to the enthusiasts right now, like that's the kind of people who would be aware of these kind of nuances between cards. So if they said to them like, hey, look, if you get a 9900K and you get one of our cards, you're going to get this much more performance out of our graphics card.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, no, I do think it's possible, but very dangerous ground.
It is.
To tie it so closely with their CPUs.
It would be, but I'm just trying to think of things that would give them an edge right now.
Also,
I think it's worth remembering before they get into the actual hardware that they don't have a discrete graphics card, and they're already like the number one graphics supplier in computers, like by far. Like their integrated graphics run on like some ridiculous like 60, 70, 80% amount of PCs, like a ton of them. So I think they have a lot of stuff tied up in there that I wouldn't be surprised if they leverage harder just for the bigger GPUs. I don't know what that would be, but they're not quite as new as we keep making them out to be. So,
well, they're not new, but among people who are into gaming, I mean, IGP I understand is a great if you got nothing else, but that's not exactly where you want to be coming from.
What are you talking about? IGPU was our best graphics card of 2018.
That was APU. I mean,
I thought you didn't want to relive the bad memory.
Yeah. I don't think that they have the strength to market Intel graphics. They have to convince consumers that when you've basically been the butt of everybody's jokes and I've made them many, many times before for, like 15, 20 years now, it feels like you gotta market it differently. Yeah, they have to convince people that this is the real deal. I mean, I think there's a lot of skepticism, right? I mean, I'm very skeptical. I mean, I hope there's competition. We need it.
I'm skeptical as an enthusiast, but I think they have good inroads, like in Best Buy and Walmart and stuff, that'll start groundswell kind of a deal. Especially because, can you imagine how easy it'd be? They've been sponsoring the Intel Extreme Masters forever at this point, the esports stuff. Just tie that in. This is Intel Inside. We've got the GPU now, brought to you by Intel Extreme Masters. Become an Intel Extreme Master. Whatever.
But I don't see. I mean, you go to your average. I always use the 12-year-old or 13-year-old. My son's 14 now, and you say, if you put on that table, do you want a NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel graphics? For the most part, it's NVIDIA because it's just even among kids, it's like, wow, this is NVIDIA. And, okay, Radeon, but it's like Intel graphics, that's just like, what?
It's going to have to take a lot of re-education.
Well, but also on
what it means.
On the other side, I was thinking when my colleague Dan was building his PC, in December or whenever we did that, he really wanted to go AMD, but, there were a couple of reasons why but also just deep down, he was like, I've never been burned by Intel is just solid. I know it's just going to work well where the AMD stuff.
He's also an Apple user.
Well, we've all been Apple users at some point. Can't hold it against us. But, do you think there's going to be a little bit of that? Hey, you know what? Intel's got the power to be solid and do it right. They do it solid and right on the CPU. The GPU side, maybe people give them a benefit of the doubt.
I don't think so.
I think it will with the masses, but I think they're going to have to win over enthusiasts.
I think though, even with the masses though, because they ask their friends, what should I get, right? And we all get that, right? And you say, well, you buy this RX 580 or you buy this 1060. That's the normal advice.
I don't even think they're the masses anymore at that point. I don't think the masses are even asking those questions.
Well, the masses don't play games. So I don't think that sector.
The masses buy consoles.
It doesn't. To me, it's just. I mean, of course, we have a very American view of it. We sort of assume everybody has plenty of money and all this hardware to throw around. But from that point of view, I think I just don't see Intel. Intel graphics is basic. It's a good thing they get to start from zero, and they are exact. I know that they have a huge share on Steam. It's basically zero though among gamers, that are into
right. No, what I mean,
gaming.
what I'm saying is that like I pointed out to Brad earlier, was that I just think those are two very different camps. And I think it, like Brad said, I think it is very likely they could win over the Walmart, Best Buy, masses type crowd.
Yeah.
Because that crowd's not even really paying attention to the different brands out there. And Intel is a name they know, right? I'm just saying that if they're trying to win the enthusiast crowd, that's like a whole separate matter.
Well, I think the easiest way to do it is to win the enthusiast crowd, because then they need to build legitimacy, right?
They do.
And if you get enthusiasts saying, "Holy smokes, this is basically 1660 Ti performance for like half the cost," then it's like, "Oh damn, this is a great deal," right? Then they tell everybody, they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and then eventually it's like, okay, it's real. Intel graphics are real. They have to get there. I think you can't. I think to try to just sort of, brute force, bundle it into all these, PCs by, hey, OEMs, you buy this 9900K, we'll give you a deal on the graphics. It's just not, I don't think. I mean,
they'll win market. Approach. They'll win market share that way, obviously, because the masses are the masses.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, right there.
But they still have to have the performance. For that crowd, it just comes down to performance.
I would say
right?
for enthusiasts, they're gonna have to pull a rabbit out of a hat to really, get their attention.
Well, does that get your? But I just want to know: is anything short of 2080 a failure?
No, I don't think so.
Not a failure. But I think it's a difference between your friend coming to you and them asking, "All right, I've got a choice of AMD, Intel, and now Intel. Which one should I get?" And it's gonna be the difference of an answer of, get whatever one's the best price, or definitely get Intel. You're gonna get this, this, and this from it, right? I mean that. There's obviously a spectrum of responses we give, but those are kind of the two extremes we're working off of.
Yeah,
I kind of have tempered expectations. I don't expect them to come out and beat NVIDIA's best out of the gate. So I'm personally hoping they come out and have a solid. If they can get into the mainstream, I think that'd be a good first generation effort for them.
Well, and also Will is pointing out a good point here too. One of the best things they can do is give NVIDIA competition, right?
Yep.
So maybe they don't beat NVIDIA, but they at least try to force NVIDIA to compete in some certain ways.
I'll tell you what, man. Talking about they'll be able to lean on OEMs and get things into Best Buy and Walmart and whatnot. Like I think that has been like one of AMD's biggest failings. It's not really a failing. It's not their fault. The fact that they just don't have a fraction of the marketing budget of NVIDIA. Like you'll see NVIDIA ads. You'll see NVIDIA G-Sync monitors at esports events. I mean, you do see that for AMD a little bit as well. But like you'd see the NVIDIA logo. Like a lot of people would, even if they can't say, like normal people couldn't say, hey, that's for NVIDIA because they're not computer enthusiasts. They go, yeah, I've seen that before. I don't think AMD has that. I think Intel has those marketing dollars, and I think that will give them a big push into it.
I wonder though. It just feels like there's a lot of resistance because NVIDIA is such a force in PC gaming. I know AMD fans, you say that, but I'm afraid that people are going to go like, "Wow, I'm reading really good things about these Intel parts. They sound pretty good. I'm gonna go buy an NVIDIA card." Just like what Dan did with like, "Wow, that Ryzen it sure gets you a lot more cores."
He did.
I'm buy Intel part because it makes me feel better, feel safer.
Yeah,
I know I get GeForce experience, and
You'd see that like after Vega and Polaris and stuff, Radeon cards released. They'd be like, "Oh man, this is a great card. I can't wait till NVIDIA has to lower its prices so I can get one of those." What are you talking about, man?
It's really unfair, right? I mean, it really is just like, oh, I just love what AMD's done with Ryzen. Now I can go buy my Intel Core i7 that has more cores at a lower price.
Yeah,
thank you for supporting them.
Also on the enthusiast angle, something we haven't talked about is they have somebody from an enthusiast site who's decided to go join them.
Oh yeah,
Kyle Bennett from Hard OCP,
that
friend of the show. Kyle Bennett.
He starts April 1st. He said, I think in his which
is not a joke.
His Twitter, and it's not a joke. I know everybody thinks it's a joke. I ran into him last night. He says it's not a joke. Of course, he could be still punking me, but I think it's real.
I mean that's big news, right? That's somebody in the enthusiasts have come to know, and to have him take a position at Intel. That's something, especially his title. Somebody said his title is
Director of Enthusiast Engagements.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, if
goes
that's
with
his
my
job,
Director of Game Optimization.
I
Guys, want to go out for a beer? It's 10:30. You just got here. I just set everything to low. We're good.
So yeah, I mean,
that joke. I'm sorry. I just love that joke. What am I going to do? I've been making fun of Intel integrated graphics for 15 years. If they suddenly are good, what am I going to do? There goes my punchline. Yeah, I think Kyle, and it's interesting because Kyle I've known him for a long time. He does not pull punches. So you have somebody who doesn't pull punches suddenly at Intel. I'm not really sure how that's
especially supposed to be an evangelist, somebody forward-facing, public-facing. They know he's going to be working with the public. You know, you would hope that they understand that he's probably going to be pretty forthcoming.
And, I will say most of the evangelists that I've known, Alex St. John is, larger-than-life evangelist for Microsoft on DirectX. It's tough because evangelists, they believe in what they believe in it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the evangelist. And they like to preach it. And I can tell you, wanting to preach
they
it.
wouldn't be the evangelist.
Wanting to preach it. But here's the thing. Wanting to preach it and lawyers often don't mix. So that kind of scares me a little bit. But then at the same time, I think it is really indication of where Intel is trying to be very different. Right? They brought Chris Hook over from AMD, and that event last night felt like a Chris Hook event. You got all these people, and just so I think it really does feel like Intel is very serious about some changes about how to approach this. Maybe
I tell you, they scooped up Ryan and some of the other guys from PC Perspective too, Ryan Trout. So they've got some people who are very smart journalists working for them now. So
and a different approach.
Yeah, it seems like they want to win hearts. So that's a big indicator of where they have their eyes trained on.
Yeah, hearts and minds, right?
Gordon will be next because they'll pay him $300,000 a year to not make Intel low jokes anymore.
Director of Games Optimization. Resolution 768. Somebody said 768. You mean 720p? It's like no. This is a new game. So 1024 by 768 is 720p would be too much.
So a couple questions and we can move on to the next topic. Blue Kid is wondering, so let's get a verdict. Are you more excited about Intel GPUs for using it scrolled up for using the GPU or the competition for other GPU makers?
I'm excited for all of it.
I'm excited for both. I mean, I think
Both.
competition is good. It'll be ultimately good, even for NVIDIA fans. It'll be good for NVIDIA to have legitimate competition. Now, I respect what AMD has done, but they just have never gotten enough parts out there to really make a dent. Right? Radeon and Vegas had actually come out at a lower price that everybody could have reached. It would have shaken things up, but they just couldn't get them out there. So I do think Intel hopefully can get these parts out at a good price. And, with FreeSync, supporting FreeSync, it could be a really valid, third option.
I'm actually really excited personally because one, competition's always a good thing to talk to that. But two, Intel doesn't like to lose. And Intel has a lot of money to throw at problems. And the GPU market has traditionally been a lot more competitive than the CPU market. So Intel entering the GPU market with all its money and all its experience and all its awesome engineers going head to against AMD and NVIDIA and everyone actually having to fight for share, I think that could, few years' time, I think things could wind up being pretty awesome for gamers.
Yeah. No, so yeah, Lane is excited for lower prices, I bet. That's
I mean, always. But I do think it creates an interesting dynamic, and that's what I'm most interested about. It's still both for me, but I think I skew a little more towards the competition side of things, just because the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of concept, where I think AMD could kind of use the help in terms of giving NVIDIA something to think about, keeping them on their toes kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a good. But I do think it's going to be very interesting. I mean, what if NVIDIA has 7 nanometer parts next year? We know how NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA does not mess around. They'll be like, oh, they're going to launch the Intel part. They'll dial it up and say we're gonna start talking 7 nanometer parts or something, right? Or this,
which, as Brad said, is only good for those of us on the consumer end.
Yeah, it is good for us, but it would not be good if Intel says, we got our parts out. It's like, oh, NVIDIA just launched their parts and they've got X more performance than everybody suddenly because they have a 7 nanometer parts.
But Intel being out there might mean that instead of them raising the price rate again by $50 or $100, they'd actually keep it down.
That's the thing. Like, I love Ryzen. I love depending on the part Radeon. Like, AMD does great work. But Intel and NVIDIA are very similar in their mindset. They're going to give it 100%, and they won't accept being second. And they both have a lot of money. And so for them to be going head-to-head versus each other in graphics, man, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. And, I mean, honestly, the best position Intel's in is they have nothing to lose. They have
Yep.
People have no, I mean, expectations. Look at me. I mean, the expectations are like,
Well, you have expectations. They're just not that high.
No, they're very, I think they're in a great position. They can come from anywhere. It's really hard for them to miss this launch, I think. It's probably what NVIDIA does more than what Intel does. Because if NVIDIA tries to stomp on their launch, then that hurts them. That'll hurt, right? If they sort of make them seem ridiculous the day they come out, then that's the best way NVIDIA could respond. It feels
it's
like
going to happen.
Intel.
I mean, the attempt will be there. I do think it'll be interesting to see what Intel's response is.
Yeah.
I think they're gathering their team probably to anticipate some of those things as well.
Yeah. I mean, they'll be fighting a guerrilla war, so I think that's. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it really is. This is not cash poor AMD trying to fight Intel and NVIDIA at the same time. This is NVIDIA and Intel really kind of like duking it out. It'll be like anything we've seen probably. So, and I've seen all the way back to i740 and like, which was a dismal failure. And
yeah, and so you were saying the atmosphere at the event was kind of more of that shedding their traditional kind of feel, right?
Yeah.
So I think it would be interesting to kind of see, if, let's just say if we had NVIDIA as someone who's like on the streets, wearing that leather jacket, ready to fight a little dirty, what's going to be like if Intel actually starts rolling up its sleeves? Right? Like Intel to me is the person who always comes to work in the perfectly pressed khakis and like the long sleeve shirt not rolled up,
Yeah.
Like what happens if they roll up their sleeves?
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It's really going to be an epic battle because if Intel seems to be laying all this groundwork to get in a really protracted, fight, the hard fight the way NVIDIA likes to fight, then it'll be interesting, right? But you're right. They're pretty much like, my word, sir, you just kicked mud on my shoes. That's kind of like how it's been in the past. So for them to kick mud back, I don't know. That's a really hard cultural change for a big company with a lot of money and a lot of lawyers like Intel, right? So
makes me think, I don't know if anyone else watches Mad Men or has watched Mad Men. Mild spoiler, but it reminds me of that scene where Lane just like puts up his fist with Pete and you're like, how is this going to go? And you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
But
spoiler.
Yes.
Does he put his fists up like the old boxers from 1920?
Yes, that's why
so great. That's why take your gloves off.
Nice.
Oh, dang. Okay, this is we've gone on too long about this. This is going to be awesome. I got to say, the best thing about this is media. We don't root for anybody to win, but as the media's job is, we root to cover the fight because that is the exciting part.
We want there to be a fight so we can cover it.
Yes, there will, and it looks like there's going to be. My word. Hands up.
I've one last question on this topic that comes into our Discord channel. Come join us over there. You can put questions any time of the weekend. We'll read it on the air. Marky.
Marky Mark?
No, Marky bakes more, but on here his name's Mark. I don't know. It's all over the place. With NVIDIA already owning the high-end gaming market, as well as Intel coming into the discrete GPU market in the near future, do you believe that AMD will be either forced out of the gaming GPU market totally, or only have a low-end budget gaming option and consoles, or will they just focus on computational server GPUs?
I think they're going to continue making graphics because although, I mean, they still own, 25-30% of the graphics market? So, I mean, it's not like they're not there. I mean, there's a lot of Radeons that sell, and the lower end ones, the RX 570 and 580 are great. But more interesting than that is their APU efforts. Like the Ryzen 2200G, if they didn't have, Radeon, then they wouldn't be able to make that part. Google Stadia or whatever was just announced this week, and it's running AMD Vega 56 variant, 56 variant as its GPU. They wouldn't have that if they weren't making, like, they have all the consoles. They make all kinds of custom wins because of Radeon. I don't expect Radeon to go anywhere anytime soon. Like, both discrete graphics to drive that custom business, and because that custom business is such a big slice of AMD's pie. So don't expect Radeon to go away.
Yeah, that's no, that'd be crazy. For if anything, the crazy 2021 story would be AMD wins it all, right?
Everybody loves an underdog story.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Do we want to move on to the next?
Yeah, I'm going to cover it really
topic.
quickly. This is basically
a lake full of comments.
Lake full of
I
comments.
really wanna go see
There
that.
is apparently
Meteora.
There's Meteor Lake in Arizona, I think. This is Intel's Comet Lake. Apparently, there was a Linux update. It included a listing of all the new CPU updates. Not too many big surprises, but Coffee Lake S desktop, 6 cores and 10 core versions, and then Comet Lake H, which is the gaming laptop 45 watt TDP part,
Okay.
6 cores and 8 cores.
Oh.
No mention of an 8 core on the desktop, and of course, no mention of a 10 core on the laptop. Apparently, this is of course I'm gonna give the shout out to Paul Elkhorn at Tom's Hardware who wrote this up. It's been reported widely, but
Paul does good work.
yeah, Paul does good work. So the interesting thing though is obviously 10 core, which has been sort of batted around as rumor for a while, but no 8 core. Maybe is what I think people are thinking.
Do you think that's just a lack of information? Because this is early, isn't it?
I think it's possible that they will. I mean, the 8th gen will still be around, or 9th Core i9 9800K will be around, but I think they probably want a little more separation, because why introduce? I mean, you already have the people saying why have 9800K and 9700K, so it gives you more separation of the 10 core. I think it's legitimate. You could have a Core i9 that's 10 core and the Core i7 that's 6 core, with no 8 core option that muddies it up. And
Oh, that's a big jump, though. I mean, practically speaking, I guess most
think
people aren't going to put it to use, but still.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
No, I was interrupting you. I'm sorry. I think I'd be more okay with that, actually, as long as they added hyperthreading back in. Because the current lineup really bothers me the way that they use, lack of hyperthreading basically to make these really weird divisions. I think if they swap the 6 and 10 core and add hyperthreading back to everything, then that could actually make it a lot more compelling for each step of the upgrade.
Yeah.
I think practically speaking, I agree with you, Brad. I just think mentally, when you're, at least me, I should say, when I'm looking at 2 different things in a product lineup and there's this huge jump to the next one, it just feels like they're twisting my arm, where it's like, okay, now you have to spend all this money to get a little more performance. There's like no in-between step. You either have to choose this side or this side. And I personally hate that.
Yeah.
I really don't like it.
Well, but then we kind of have that work. The natural lineup was always i5, i7, 239, 229, and 339, 330. So we sort of, I mean, maybe it's possible. It's hard for me to see them selling a 10 core for back to that lower price, but yeah, wherever they split it, I guess maybe they just leave i9 900K around, because these are essentially the same, cores, the same, it doesn't change too much from what there was.
That would get so confusing, though.
Yeah. And then, of course, the laptop, no 10 core, but, they're going to apparently attempt an 8 core.
Realistically, though, would you really want 10 core in a laptop? Seems like that thing would be chained to a wall all the time.
Yeah, it depends on the implementation. I think there's some options where you'd want it. I mean, the Alienware out there with the 900K it's nice. So I think it would be nice. It'd be a bummer to be that far behind.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you're going, was it mobile? It's a mobile part. It would be a mobile part, right? So
Yeah.
10 core mobile versus like a full desktop socketed part. I kind of feel like at that point, what are you really getting?
Well, you're getting 8
advantage.
cores, hyperthreading probably, so 16 threads in a laptop is still pretty damn impressive.
But in mobile, it'd be limited. The performance wouldn't be as.
Yeah, the thermals would greatly limit it. So
Yeah.
I don't think it'll.
So this is Comet Lake. That's the fill-in for later this year or next year. What is that?
So it's going to be Comet Lake.
Great question.
My guess is Comet Lake, which is the 9th gen parts. They sort of said, hey, they're coming out in July,
Like-
I think is what they said yesterday.
True 9th gen?
What is it?
Continuation of 9th gen? I mean, at this point, it's so confusing.
Well, the crazy thing
Is
is
it 10
like,
nanometer? What
no.
nanometer?
So these are essentially Coffee Lake refresh
Plus,
parts.
plus,
So
plus,
these
plus.
these are more better versions, moreness. Question is whether they're going to have any. I mean, sometimes it feels like the shortages of the Intel CPUs has just really kind of killed them. So if they have something other than just a piece of paper would be great. So these will just be coming out probably later this summer. These I think are going to be the 9th gen parts that are coming out this summer. I think Comet Lake H will come out this summer, 8 core. They actually yesterday they recognized they said that the 8th gen Coffee Lake parts, the 6 cores, they saw a huge uptake of those parts. People were like, wow, this is, it was a really worthy upgrade, right? I mean, 6th gen to 7th gen was like, yeah, this is a waste of money, but 7th to 8 was a great deal. So I think they're kind of hoping the same thing here with Comet Lake H. So,
well, I think we've talked about it on the show before, but the 8th gen parts are the first ones that I think ever I've thought, even if you have a 7th gen part, it's worth upgrading because the extra cores and threads make it that worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can up it to 10 cores, it might be the case again.
yeah. So this will be probably the last till we hopefully get 10 nanometer parts from Intel at some point.
I think we have an article on our site. I just had a chance to skim it this morning. Mark Hockman, another reporter for us, he was saying he gets the feeling that new 9th gen mobile CPUs are like basically imminent. Like he was saying, like next month.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the time frame they're saying, right? So it's soonish, pretty soon, and it'll probably be this Comet Lake part, I'm guessing, which makes sense.
Cool.
Comet Lake H. So
I'm just getting having such trouble keeping it all straight these
too
days.
many
man.
lakes. You can't. Even the whole 9th gen thing is kind of confusing sometimes.
The lake thing wasn't bad until they started muddling up the generations. Like it feels like it's not. Generations actually used to mean something, like some significant like change, and now it just kind of means maybe more clocks, maybe more cores.
Yeah, and there hasn't been much of a real change in the actual microarchitecture since KB Lake. So it's like these are really like generation 7.3, right?
I mean, it's impressive how much life they're getting out of it. Don't get me wrong. It's just in terms of how they're naming it, it's just confusing me.
Yeah.
It makes me worried kind of for 10 nanometer because they've like rung 14 nanometer for every drop of performance you can get out of it pretty close at this point. So I'm real curious to see if 10 nanometers manages to hold up first time out of the gate.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, before nobody would ever question that Intel would miss that badly. And this time I think everybody's kind of worried. So, but the good news is you could buy one of the GPUs next year. So,
and Flash Photos asking, does this push Sunny Cove and Ice Lake to later?
I think that's still, well, if these come out, say May, then I think Sunny Cove is later this year, right? So probably like it feels like a CES kind of thing, end of the year.
They said 10 nanometer would be shipping by the holidays. I've always predicted that means just in some ultra thin and light laptops, and desktop will be next year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Keep
an eye on it. Yeah, let's get to questions.
How were babies made?
What?
Nothing. I was just
family show, Brad.
Yeah, if you want to get your questions in, Discord is the easiest way to get them in there because sometimes it's hard for me to get all the chat coming through. But I do have a couple that have been lining up. Over here, Will, friend of the show, Will's asking how much would Intel's GPU benefit from their manufacturing process, such as 14 nanometer plus.
I think we'd have to see, right? But they do claim that, hey, and they've always said that, we're better than everybody else. At the same time, we don't have 10 nanometer parts, so
they say that their 14 nanometers like the equivalent of the 10 nanometer, 7 nanometer parts that TSMC and whatnot are putting out. So
right.
We'll have to see. Yeah, we can't really make that comparison until we have actual parts to test and compare against.
Yeah. And at the same time, their 14 nanometer CPUs are pretty damn impressive what they're getting out of them. So maybe we'll see that with GPUs. Who knows?
Okay. Dennis was asking, hi, Adam. Hello. Can you ask if NVIDIA have technological potential to get into CPU business with maybe ARM architecture? Is it possible?
They already have Tegra chips that do just that, but they're not for PCs because ARM really hasn't made an impact on PCs. But, I mean, that's what Tegra is. That's what's inside the Nintendo Switch. That's what's inside this Jetson Nano developer kit. They already have that going on. But they have a checkered past with Intel. NVIDIA at one point wanted to do CPUs for PCs, and it didn't end up well. So I don't expect them to get into PCs.
Yeah, and I would probably think that NVIDIA's point of view is like, you don't need a general purpose CPU. You need a general purpose CPU in your computer to do like USB transfers, which is essentially plumbing. You want the sexy stuff on our GPUs is, I think, their point of view at this point. Because, yeah, everybody expected NVIDIA to make an x86 CPU, but that's just very difficult, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Delucia was asking, Gordon, when is your Alienware Area 51M review coming out?
Everyone wants to know, Gordon.
Everyone wants to know,
I'm
Gordon.
hoping pretty soon. I was shooting for Friday, but a lot of GDC stuff happened, so probably Monday-ish next week.
But we are, as long as we're still on, doing the video this afternoon. So
Yeah. No, it's very impressive.
yeah. Okay.
Spoiler warning.
Spoilers.
Oh, right.
And Dennis asked, what does Gordon think will be the future of SATA format? Are we going to have faster versions, or is it going to be NVMe from now on?
I think it'll be pretty much NVMe at this point. SATA sort of run its course. I think the roadmap actually had iterations beyond SATA 6 gigs, but they just kind of like, what's the point? So
We love, I have an NVMe drive. I love NVMe drives because I transfer large videos and stuff around. But in general, I mean, of course it can get better and it should get better over time. But SATA 6 gigs is great for your average user. It'll make your computer start like that. Everything will fast. I'm not too bummed about it.
Yeah, and they usually they don't want to move until they have to. It's still used for a lot of hard drives, and hard drives don't need more than SATA 6 gig. So why go through all this extra cost to develop and push out, SATA 12? There's no point in it right now.
Vignesh says, what about U.2?
Yeah.
What about
That's exactly what I was going to say, Brad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think people have I think consumers in the industry they've settled on M.2 implementations, pretty much.
I just think it never caught on because it just wasn't. It's like that's the danger that Intel risks on the GPU side, right? Where it's like you try to put your name out there, and if you don't really push it hard, no one's going to adopt it because they don't know it's there.
Yeah, and so the PC industry generally, if it's going to cost more and really not get you that much more benefit, it never succeeds. A lot of standards. Yeah, it's like life, right?
What's the phrase? It's like it's a solution for a problem no one was looking to solve, kind of thing.
But I mean, that's the argument. But of course, it did solve a lot of practical issues, capacity, power.
I'm not saying it didn't have great features. It's just that if the community doesn't feel it needs to fix that problem in that way, they're not gonna, take to it.
Yeah. Also, they're cheap. No, I mean for M.2 drives, to take an M.2 drive that can be thermally sensitive and then jam it under a big ass hot GPU. It was never a great idea, but people are just like, I don't care. I'm not going to pay extra for all this other hardware to do it, and I'm going to cheap out. So, the same thing with going back to Intel tried to push a new motherboard spec called BTX 20 years ago, and ATX is ridiculous. The first case that I ever built, if I had not thrown it away, I could still use that and build a current computer, which is awesome. But the PC has changed. There's no reason to have all these rules from 1992 still in place that I'm to build a modern computer for. So, but you can't. It just wasn't worth the money to retool everything to everybody, unfortunately. I'm just complaining.
Okay. Blue Kid asked, considering the next 2-3 years, what do you think will be the recommendation for cores threads? I feel like a 16-core, 32 thread rumors won't benefit gaming, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you'll be lucky. I think we'll be lucky to, in the next 5 years, if 6 and 8 thread CPUs are considered what you need for gaming, I think would that be a good place. I mean, these changes happen very slowly because people have gaming computers that up until last year or the year before were all quad cores at best. So, and that's where it's going to continue to be for a while, I think. Like, as far as game optimization is concerned, I don't think there's going to be any games that take advantage of 32 threads very well anytime soon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's
Definitely not soon if that's the frame.
The need for 16 cores is not going to change overnight, but I do say I think it may get more compressed. I wouldn't say, you said 3 years maybe, or 4 years?
For what?
For how long do you think will continue to be normal, I guess? I kind of feel like...
Yeah, something like that. I think maybe 5 years from now, we'll start to see more 6 cores, more 8, especially if those are becoming the new normal with AMD and Ryzen's current generation.
It takes time for things to reflect in development, right? Because all the games that are coming out now started development 3 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, I guess I get that. I mean, who knows? This is just a gut feeling that 5 years probably feels too long for that. I feel like, 2 years, maybe 3 years from now, I think like 8 core will be sort of like the minimum. Spec.
I think that's too much. I think maybe 2 years from now, you'll start to see it trickle out more. I don't think it's not going to hit all at once. I think it's going to be a gradual shift.
I'm curious to see where it can go, though, because like open world games in particular can hit the CPU pretty heavy, use all those cores. It'll be sweet if there's like some crazy like Ashes of Singularity style open world game that's just like almost a tech demo. And just like how ridiculous it can scale up, it'll just go with your hardware. And I'd love to see something like that one day.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. But yeah, 16, it'd be awesome to see something use 32 threads in a game. It's just not realistic.
I think it'd be interesting to see it. I don't think it'd be a great. Well, I think it would exclude a lot of people from being able to play games if it ever, really went that direction.
It's not about excluding. It's about being aspirational. Like, wow, this is amazing. You paid for it.
I mean, if you can scale it back down, sure. But I'm just saying, like, if games start to become like that demanding, then...
Well, I mean, the developers want to make money. They're always it'll run, but it may not get you all the features of, a 12-core machine or, 24-thread box. So it'd be great if they did that. And, DirectX 12 is, 2 years from now, DirectX 12 is probably hopefully heavily supported. And I'm really surprised. I was playing Far Cry 5 and I was seeing in a laptop the Coffee Lake H part was like, it was having a hard time almost. It really felt like, wow, you could almost
open worlds.
Yeah, you needed more almost. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think 5 years feels like, that's a long time from now. I look back to 2014.
2014, 5 years ago.
Man,
I know, time goes
quad
quick.
cores and 8 cores if you're lucky, right? That was just like if you're rich, you're super rich, you had an 8-core machine. So
money. Now switching over to Discord, Z530, laptop user here. I'm using Full Nerd's 2017 laptop of the year, the Acer E5 575G. It has an NVIDIA 940 MX, which hasn't aged well for modern games. What's the cheapest laptop GPU that can do 1080p gaming? What'd you recommend?
I would definitely go. It feels like 1060 is sort of your floor these days. 1050 Ti's are still out there, but
I wouldn't do it. If you're looking to upgrade because the graphics chip that he's talking about isn't feeling robust enough, I would look for a GTX 1060 model. Now that 2060s are out, you can actually find them on pretty great sales. You can find, if you look around and you're patient, you can find GTX 1060 laptops sometimes for $700, $800.
Wow.
So it wouldn't be the skinniest one. It wouldn't be the most pretty one necessarily, but it would be a good gaming laptop that gets the job done.
Yeah. And, all day you can get that Predator. Is it the Helios 300? I forget which one it is.
500?
Yeah.
300.
Yeah. The Helios 300. And the one you just reviewed.
Yeah, that's basically $1,000.
I think the laptop that viewer mentioned is in the budget range. So the Helios
Yes.
is going to be a little bit of a bump up in price, but
Yeah.
you'll get good performance for that.
You know, the tough thing about if you're really pushing those kind of games, there's this weird kind of zone once you get to about $700. There's like that 6 to 7 to 8 where it's like, just for $100 more, you get a lot more,
Yeah, I kind of feel if you start looking in the 700 range, if you really want to go from, because I feel like 700 is like you still have to ask yourself to make compromises, like the 940 MX, and if you don't want to make compromises, you have to jump up to about the $1,000 range, which is where the Helios lives.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you're really seeing 1060 laptops down at $800, that's the way to go, I would think.
Yeah.
I do think 1050 Ti's, that's a 1080p but medium
It's a
kind of
medium.
feeling like these days. It's not really
And it's
up
not
to
gonna. I don't think it's gonna have much legs to it. The further we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my concern. If he's worried about upgrading this one already, the 1050 Ti would be an upgrade, but it probably wouldn't. Like, if you're gonna make the point to upgrade your whole laptop just a couple years later because you want more graphics power, I would recommend at least a GTX 1060.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we haven't seen mobile 16 series parts, right? So we could see 1660 from NVIDIA this year, possibly, right? I'm just guessing, making that up, but no reason not to see it.
They will not be anywhere near as cheap as what you could find a GTX 1060 fire sale model for.
No, definitely not.
But you'd be trading the longevity for the money, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, a couple more. We have a couple questions about the whole streaming console stuff, like the Stadia. Stadia? Is that it? Man, I keep messing up the pronunciation. Big Mama asks first, your thoughts on AMD's domination in gaming consoles, next-gen consoles, probably Google Stadia, Microsoft Project xCloud. How can it affect game development and optimizations?
It'll probably make it so ray tracing doesn't get picked up as fast as NVIDIA would probably hope for if, all the cloud streaming services and consoles don't support it. But yeah, I would say it wouldn't make too much of a difference because when AMD won the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, we're like, oh, what does this mean for AMD? Does that mean FreeSync's going to be the new? It turned out to be a standard many years later. But what's good is this going to do for AMD and PC gaming? And the answer turned out to be actually like not that much. So I think them being in there is a good win for them, but I don't think it has a huge impact overall on PC gaming in general. I don't think it affects the marketplace. Do y'all have any other thoughts?
I would agree with that. I don't think anybody that would even look at the Stadia thing is an actual PC gamer full time.
I think any effect is going to be indirect, right? So it's more of it keeps AMD's lights on, and therefore AMD's in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, just sort of the Stadia thing, I think.
Right. I'm just saying, but indirectly, right? So they're doing all these things, right? So that it'll indirectly affect maybe the adoption of ray tracing on NVIDIA side, things like that. But I don't think it's like head to head. This is going to cause this sort of thing.
And no one asked this specifically about Stadia, but I was wondering, it's built off of Linux. So if they're doing all this work to get games to run better on Linux, how's that going to impact stuff as well? Because there's so much around DirectX and Microsoft, and
there's a lot that we don't know yet about Stadia. We don't know the pricing. We don't know how they're going to sell the games. We don't know a whole bunch of stuff. But assuming that it is popular and it does take off, because, being able to click play now at the end of a YouTube trailer and be playing 5 seconds later is pretty powerful in theory. That's really good for people who like Linux, because, Linux gaming, it's been kind of quiet, but over the past year, it's gotten dramatically better because Steam rolled out a thing. So basically, a ton of Windows games now just have a wine-like tool and will just run on Linux now. These Stadia games don't have to get, not quite ported over to Linux, but that's basically it. So there's a good possibility that could be a lot of additional good things for Linux gaming.
Right, yeah. Okay. And then also on that Stadia tip, Chef Pachimari, do we see a mainstream rollout of ISP infrastructure 5 years out? Because obviously it's going to need a lot. So much of internet is still bad out there in America.
That's my answer.
In America.
That's a no, I think.
That's a no.
That's a skeptical laugh. That's a
Man,
sarcastic
broadband infrastructure in the U.S. is so terrible.
Yeah.
I don't see that changing in the next 5 years. Not dramatically, rather.
I think it's too bad. We're entering the point where politicians need to start considering whether or not that's like a public infrastructure good, I think, at this point. Because America's internet is not great. So I don't have high hopes about a big rollout in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's really weird too, because I like the Stadia thing is really interesting. There's some really cool features of it. But it does there's bandwidth caps, there's just simply latency. And then the other thing that is scary to me is Google's attention span, which, is probably not any better than my own attention span. Wait, what was I talking about? So it's like almost like, oh, wow, this is the coolest game streaming technology. But, our ISPs are so far behind. Wow, wouldn't it be cool if somebody built like a fiber network across the U.S.? Maybe we should get into that.
Who could do that? Google could do that, right?
But they've already done it and they gave up on it.
They shut down in one city already.
So it just seems like, what? Why are you pushing this now that would realize? Why would you give up on the fiber thing to build the service that would have perfectly worked with that?
Also, it's Google, so it's very possible they'll come up with 3 different other ideas for how to stream games.
I was talking with NVIDIA yesterday because I love to just talk smack about everybody, and I was just like, you guys should cut a deal with Google now. And they're like, what? It's like, yeah, because I bet you could cut a deal with Google for GeForce Now, and the other part of Google wouldn't even know that they'd done that. They'd be like offering 2 competing services. Like, what's going on? I don't understand.
And then they would shutter one 3 years later after people had gotten used to it.
Yeah. It's Hangouts. I would hate to see that recycling bin at Google. I get Google Plus in there, and then Hangouts.
Dude, Google Wave.
Fiber,
Google Wave was awesome.
We've got no room in this.
Yeah.
We've got no room in the recycling dumpster.
I found it really funny and really ironic. 2 seconds after he said, you'll be able to click play now and be playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey within 5 seconds, the stream glitched on me on YouTube. I'm like, come on. This is Pete Google right here.
Perfect.
Oh, you know what I do want to say? I asked NVIDIA about GeForce Now, and because it feels like it from the outside, because there's no media, it just looks like they gave up. But they said, we just sent out 40,000 invites last week for GeForce Now, and they said
it was low key, but they announced a bunch of, again, dev focused, business focused kind of updates at GDC this very week. There are like 4 or 5 major updates, program wise and stuff like that. They haven't announced an actual release date or anything, pricing, but they are definitely working on it.
And I've been using it at least a couple times a month on my Shield TV just to pop in, check it out, try it out.
It's going.
Yeah, So.
Here's the thing. Here's what you want to do when it's getting up to be a Steam sale, right? Because the cool thing about GeForce Now is it installs games like that. What you want to do is, get into the GeForce Now program, and then right before a Steam sale starts, just load all your games and boot into them and let them run for like 5 minutes. You'll get all the cards, and then you can sell them, and you'll have all the money you need to get Steam sale games.
Dang, man.
wow, is that some kind of backwards?
Dang.
I'm cheap. Yeah, I'm cheap.
No, that's a slick deal type of way of approaching things. I salute you, sir.
Huh.
That's cool, Brad, except
You
they
just
also
blew my mind.
they mentioned that the wait list for GeForce Now is 1 million people.
Well, I got it on my desktop, so.
Wow.
All right,
I'm
just to
gonna
let
be
you all
doing-
know, I do have a hard stop
Yes.
in about
Well,
5 minutes. So.
Last question from friend on Discord, Rooker. If a GTX 1650 comes out, would you expect it to need as little power as the 1050?
Yes. That's what they've been doing with these mainstream GTX cards, just keeping the TDP the same. And Turing is much more efficient than Pascal was, so I would expect it to be about the same, yeah.
What's the next natural performance slot from 10 series that it would replace? Would it be 1060 performance and a 1650 card? Possibly.
Something like that. Depends on pricing. It's NVIDIA. They're gonna figure out, we can get this to get it so it's 2 frames faster than last gen, so we can advertise this and we'll charge it for this much. So they're gonna figure it out. But yeah, something like that.
I am just thinking to be able to get 1060 class performance for
150 bucks for a GTX 1060. I love it.
Of course, 580 is sort of there already.
Nice.
That's not a prediction. That's just me saying.
Oh, that's not a prediction. Okay.
It's that would be nice.
He's going to put all his Steam money on that.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. Haha, NVIDIA, you paid for this.
Yeah, right now they're editing that file. Find his login.
All right. Let's wrap it up. That's it for today.
All right. Check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For our audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And welcome to Spotify.
Woohoo!
Send questions and comments to the Full Nerd at PCWorld.com. Every time you do, Disney considers possibly picking us up as a affiliate. I'm making that up. That's not true at all. The mouse has it against us. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Jarkus.
Adios.
Elaine Yee.
Bye, everyone.
And Adam Patrick Murray sitting the off switch.
Go stream some games. Try it out.